Shalom and welcome to Temple Talk from the International Department of the Temple Institute, Jerusalem, Israel. Rabbi Chaim Richman here and Yitzchak Reuven. Today, the 7th day of the month of MarCheshvan, 5775? Where's the time flying?
5776.
October
We start
20th,
again,
2015. And this week, Parshat Lech Lecha, the emergence of the patriarch Abraham onto the scene. You know, this month is really, in so many ways, totally focused on the Holy Temple. It's Holy Temple month, even though ostensibly it doesn't have any holidays in it at all. And that is the secret of the amazing month of MarCheshvan, this month that, especially coming on the heels of the month of Tishrei, so replete with so many colorful observances of Sukkot and Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah. Now we come into Tishrei. Nothing seems to be going on, but there is this amazing idea that our sages of blessed memory reflect upon in the Midrash, that the month of MarCheshvan is on hold in the future for the dedication of the third temple. And of course, on the 17th day of the month of MarCheshvan, the flood began. What is this fascinating mystical tradition relating to the month of MarCheshvan? Basically, it goes like this. The Midrash states that the tabernacle of the desert was completed by Moshe in the month of Kislev. However, the Holy One, blessed be He, commanded him to wait until the following Nisan to inaugurate it. States the Midrash, the month of Kislev was embarrassed, and so God rewarded her with the rededication of the second temple during the era of Hanukkah. And then the Midrash continues and says the first temple built by King Solomon was completed during the month of MarCheshvan, which, by the way, you can see in 1 Kings chapter 6 and verse 38. The month is known as Bul. However, through divine inspiration, King Solomon knew that he was not to dedicate it until the following Tishrei. So the month of MarCheshvan was embarrassed. And God promised to repay it in the future with the dedication ceremony of the third temple. And we ask, how should such a tradition be understood? Is it merely an anecdote? Is it a whimsical tale of a month being embarrassed, devoid of any significance in our real world? And of course, the question is, what would make such a dream, such a vision come true? And that is really, I think, the answer to this whole question. You know, any month that will see the dedication of the third temple is fine with me. It doesn't have to be this month or that month. It doesn't have to be MarCheshvan. But I think one idea that's being conveyed is the idea that time is what we do with it. It is laden with promise and potential. The best is always yet to come. And there is something, yes, intrinsically bound up with the nature of this month that is predisposed to the building of the third temple. But you know what? That is my introduction to this program, because that is the backdrop of everything that is going on all around us. So we can easily call this month of MarCheshvan Holy Temple Month. First of all, going from the light to the more intense, may I point out that this week, in fact, it was yesterday here in Israel, Monday, the 6th day of the month of MarCheshvan, was a very, very special day. It was the 850th anniversary of the great Maimonides' ascent to the Temple Mount. Because we know this, because in a letter, Maimonides writes that he ascended to the Temple Mount. He writes, Tachat Sakana, under peril. He ascended to the Temple Mount on the 6th day of the month of MarCheshvan. If you want to read the full story of Maimonides' sea journey to the land of Israel and his exploits on that trip, you can read about it in a very readable version on the Temple Institute's website.
Also on the Facebook page.
And also on our Facebook page. And the peril that Maimonides is referring to is the fact that those were days in which the Crusaders were sovereign in Jerusalem, and they were basically killing all the Jews that they could find in the open thoroughfares as it is. And he came all the way to Jerusalem, went up on the Temple Mount to pray. And Maimonides, the great rationalist and philosopher, betrays a a touch of emotion that is unlike his general style of writing in this letter, where he expresses how moved he was to, as he puts it in his words, to have entered into the great and holy house, meaning the place of the holy temple, and prayed there. And he was so profoundly affected by the great privilege, what he considered to be the great personal privilege that he had of going to the Temple Mount to pray there, that he established a tradition within his family for all time. He left instructions, a will, as it were, to his descendants for the end of time. He said he wants them to always mark the day, the 6th day of the month of MarCheshvan, as a day of rejoicing, of feasting, of gladness, in commemoration of his aliyah to the Temple Mount. And indeed, the Temple Institute began a tradition some years ago of marking this day, the 6th day of the month of MarCheshvan, and this year was no exception. Yesterday saw hundreds of Jews that came to ascend the Temple Mount in purity, and yours truly was in the very first group, together with some very dear friends from America that came and that got up at a very, very early hour and made all the necessary preparations in order to visit the Temple Mount. And we were up at 7:30 in the morning on the Mount, and we actually created a short video that conveys our message to the world regarding what's going on in Israel now, regarding the Temple Mount and its centrality. And that message is called, the name of the film is called...
The name of the film is called Ascending the Temple Mount on Rambam Day, Rambam being Maimonides.
And it is available to see on the Temple Institute's YouTube channel, and also, of course, on our Facebook page.
Facebook, Twitter, website, you got it.
But that's only about the 6th day of the month of MarCheshvan, which is yesterday.
There's more?
Yes, today.
You didn't mention something else, just as an aside here, Rabbi, because we didn't really get any verification, but you said yesterday you overheard one of the people with us on the Temple Mount saying
that's right,
to someone that he actually himself is a descendant of Maimonides.
Amazing. We had a small English language group that we were guiding, but there was another group and actually there was also a French-speaking group at the same time. There was a Hebrew-speaking group, and their guide was a young man who actually, frankly, I've never seen before on the Temple Mount, but there are more and more wonderful Jewish people that are taking the plunge and ascending the Temple Mount every day. And he explained to his group, I heard, very modestly, I happened to hear him say that he is a direct descendant of Maimonides, and so he was taking this very personally and very seriously.
It's pretty amazing. I mean,
absolutely.
That's something.
Today, Yitzchak, is also a temple-related day, and central to our calendar as Jews in the land of Israel, because today is the 7th day of the month of MarCheshvan, which, if you look at the calendar, you will recall is exactly 2 weeks after the conclusion of the festival of Sukkot. And today, Shmini Atzeret to be specific, and today is the day in Halacha, in Jewish law, those who live in the land of Israel begin to change the words of the daily prayer that we say thrice daily, the Amidah, and we begin to pray for rain. We begin to ask for the blessing of rain, beginning on the 7th day of the month of MarCheshvan. And the reason for that, Yitzchak, is what?
Because 2 weeks is considered enough time for the pilgrims in the days of yore to return back to their houses from the Holy Temple, so that, God forbid, we want rain, but we don't want people to get caught in a storm while they're on the road.
Precisely. 2 weeks is considered to be the maximum amount of time that the most far-flung pilgrims who might have come all the way from Babylon, who came to visit Jerusalem, must have made it back by now, and they're not out in the open road, so they won't be soaked when our prayers come true.
We got some rain last night and this morning in my hometown. Did you?
Yes.
Yeah.
We got some rain, a few minutes of rain. It's time for the rain to start. But my point being that
even the rain falls according to the
calendar of the Holy Temple.
Temple.
And in Jewish law, we are still so totally concentrating, fixated, centralized on the Holy Temple as being the marker and as being part of our lives, that the format for our prayers, which is a very serious thing, that's institutionalized and very holy for the Jewish people, it revolves on the calendar of the Holy Temple. But Yitzchak, all that, is one thing. The 850th anniversary of Maimonides' ascent, okay. The fact that we began asking for rain last night and today because of the Holy Temple calendar, very nice. The fact that there is a mystical tradition, rather abstract, about the potential in this month for the building of the Holy Temple, MarCheshvan, the embarrassed month, that is on hold for this wonderful, joyous occasion in the future. That's all nice. But actually, in a very, very practical way, in a very, very real way, and in a very demonstratable way, the Holy Temple and the Temple Mount is absolutely bursting out of the seams as the major theme. Unavoidable, it's in your face, and it is begging to be addressed of this month. And of course, by that I refer to the very convoluted campaign that is either being waged or being denied regarding the Temple Mount as being the reason why we are being subjected here in Israel to a horrendous resurgence of murder and Arab terror. And what of course I'm referring to is the hype that is being parroted by the Muslims that Israel is poised to change the status quo on the Temple Mount, which means that they're trying to incite that Israel is about to build the Holy Temple or about to allow Jews to pray there or this kind of thing. And so the Palestinian so-called leaders start inciting their people. And they've actually gone as far as to say that this is the reason why they are attacking Jews everywhere. And by the way, if I may, and I just feel I have to tell you these things because I know that some very wonderful, dear people who love Israel all across the world have no idea what's going on because it's simply not reported. And if it is reported, it's reported in such a way as to avoid being seen, or it's so totally skewed that you don't even have any idea what's going on. So as of now, I just need to tell you that today there were two attacks by vehicular attacks, which is one style of terror. A 55-year-old resident of Kiryat Arba was hit by a truck today after being stoned, and his car came under an attack of stones, and he got out of his car when these Arab rock throwers ambushed him. He was hit by a truck. Also, just within the past hour, as of this recording, there was another vehicular attack at the junction of Gush Etzion, and I believe that one person was hurt moderately and one lightly. Of course, at the time of last week's Temple Talk, October 13th, 2 Israelis were killed and 15 injured in a stabbing and shooting attack on a bus in southern Jerusalem. And then there was another attack the same day, simultaneously actually, in another part of Jerusalem, and a man was killed, being struck by a car. And then October 18th, which is just 2 days ago, a 19-year-old Israeli soldier was killed in the bus station in Beersheba. And I'm not mentioning many, many other incidents of stoning, of attempted knifings, of all sorts of things that did not end with tragedy, thank God. And, of course, in the meantime, Hamas has called for a renewal of suicide bombings. And all the while, all this is being blamed on the Temple Mount, and Israel comes along and says, and in the meantime, people are jumping in on the act. France is suggesting that there should be international observers on the Temple Mount. And the Secretary of State, John Kerry, is demanding clarity and clarification and saying that he is seeking to upgrade and clarify the understandings reached by Israel and Jordan last year on the Temple Mount status quo. And Kerry says the newest report that I'm reading today is that Kerry wants a Temple Mount status quo in writing. Okay, and of course, when we use the expression status quo, it means things as they used to be or are supposed to be. And of course, the Holy Temple is really the status quo on the Temple Mount. But in any event, so Israel comes along and says, no, we're not planning on making any change. And Netanyahu addressed the world and said, we're not planning on building the Holy Temple. We're not planning on making any change. We're not allowing the Jews to pray on the Temple Mount. So this is, to me, it's like an absurd cosmic who's on first. And I don't even know. It's kind of like a dog chasing its tail. I don't even know where to stop the motion and get in and try to say something, because first of all, as far as the lie machine of the Arabs is concerned, they've been trying to kill us. They've always been trying to kill us. There's nothing new here whatsoever.
And they've used this ploy about the Temple Mount for 100 years now.
And it's always the same excuse.
It always works.
And when the Fogel children were butchered and babies were murdered and hearts were cut out, that had nothing to do with the Temple Mount. And none of this has anything to do with the Temple Mount. And the Jewish people have been trying to pray on the Temple Mount for many, many years. And it's true that those efforts have been accelerated, because we have every right in the world to pray there, because it's our holy place, and everybody knows that, and Israel admits that as well. But yet Israel says that they will respect what's called the status quo, which means that only Muslims can pray there, and there's no explanation whatsoever for why that should be the case. So the Secretary of State, John Kerry, is very, very concerned about the escalation and violence, and it's always called an escalation, it's always called a spiral of violence, and it's always spoken about in such a way that bespeaks or intimates that both sides are equally responsible. First, Kerry was saying, if you read the news and you follow along the doublespeak and the flip-flopping, it's so amazing, because first Kerry was saying that the status quo has been what is the word, Yitzchak, that I want to say? This has been mufar, hafara. Status quo has been
broken.
Has been broken, right? And Israel says, no, that's not true. And then Kerry came along and said, okay, no, I didn't mean to say that the status quo has been, his spokesman said, no, the status quo wasn't broken. And then Kerry says, first he says that it has to do with Israeli settlements, which is absolutely absurd, because everybody knows that the PLO was founded way before there were any settlements. It's got nothing to do with anything except the existence of Israel and the existence of Jewish people altogether. And you know what really bothers me the most about this incredible American hypocrisy and America's strong role in basically empowering terrorism, enabling the murder, and delegitimizing the Jewish people by saying that they are standing up and very concerned about the status quo and that we have to respect the status quo, because of this quotation that I want to give you right now, word for word, from John Kerry. John Kerry, Secretary of State of the United States, said the following. He said, "The freedom to profess and practice one's beliefs is the birthright of every human being."
He said that a week ago at a special ceremony.
Exactly.
About human rights around religious rights, human rights around the world.
He said the freedom to profess and practice one's belief is the birthright of every human being. So I understand from that either Jewish people are not human beings, or that might be true, that the freedom to profess and practice one's belief is the birthright of every human being, but it doesn't apply to us for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, I don't have only America to blame. I have my own leaders to blame first and foremost, because they are not making their case. They are not willing to stand up and announce that this is our place. This is the only place for the Jewish people. They're not willing to strongly enough pursue that idea. And so we have this ridiculous conundrum wherein the total equation is about delegitimizing the Jewish people in the land of Israel under any name, and it goes on and on in the most ridiculous extremes. So, whether or not they are blaming settlements, or they're blaming the Jewish people's designs on the Temple Mount, it's all the same empty excuse. It's all bemoaning the two-state solution. John Kerry says, what's happening is that unless we get going, a two-state solution could conceivably be stolen from everybody, especially from us, because if the two-state solution is made, then the land will be stolen from the people of Israel. So I don't know how to explain all of this. It is obviously cosmic. In the meantime, it is definitely a new terror war. It is definitely a religious war. So there's no sense worrying that it might erupt into a religious war, because it is a religious war, and that's all it is. And the amazing manifestations of this war are that, for example, the so-called Palestinian, the Arab lie machine, incitement machine, murder machine is so well oiled and so advanced that now what they do is they can just deny everything. They can just bold and bald-facedly stand in court, a perpetrator, and say, no, I didn't run that person over. No, I didn't do that. No, I didn't have a knife on me. No, I wasn't chasing that Jew and knifing them. I was being chased myself by a settler. And then we showed film documentation, but they say that we made it up. And then Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas accused Israel of executing 13-year-old Ahmad Manasseh in cold blood. And then it turns out Israel releases a video showing this boy, this 13-year-old murderous person, still alive, being treated, of course, at my expense at Hadassah Hospital after having stabbed and seriously injured a Jewish teenager. And suddenly it turns out he was alive, and on it goes.
And on it goes. Even the Palestinian Authority's official Fatah Facebook page is just filled with horrible incitement. And again, as you said, the blame ultimately rests at our door, because our leaders are not stating the case, and they're not making the case. And if there's ever an opportunity right now to say, yes, we do want to change the status quo in the Temple Mount, and I do agree that the Temple Mount is the key to everything, then now's the time to do it, and let the world tell us that, no, you're wrong,
but
Jews have no
shouldn't
rights.
We be wanting to change the status quo on the Temple Mount? Yeah, shouldn't we want to change the status quo?
Of course we want to change it. The status quo on the Temple Mount is completely unacceptable. Horrible. Of course we want to change it, Prime Minister Netanyahu. We want to change the status quo in the Temple Mount.
So let's change it right here on Temple Talk. Stay with us for the next half of Temple Talk, changing the status quo.
Shalom and welcome back to Temple Talk. This is Yitzchak Reuven with Rabbi Chaim Richman at Temple Institute. Today is the 7th day of the month of MarCheshvan, 5776, 20th day of October, 2015. John Kerry, Secretary of State of the United States, says he's seeking clarity on the Temple Mount, clarity on the status quo. He obviously is exceedingly ignorant and doesn't know up from down when it comes to the Temple Mount or anything. As a matter of fact, I would say he's one of the more stupid Secretary of States that's come along in a long time. But I just want to pick up on that word, clarity. Who else was seeking clarity? Havdil, Elef Havdalot.
I know where you're going.
And can you maybe let's translate that Lahavdil?
To make a huge distinction from east to west.
Another individual
in history
who was seeking clarity was Avraham Avinu, the patriarch Abraham, and this is his parsha Lech Lecha, and he got this calling from God, and that calling was to go to the land of Israel, to leave everything your homeland, your family, go to the land of Israel. And there to enter into a relationship and a covenant with God. And the calling didn't come out of nowhere, because Avraham himself was a seeker. And he sought out God. And this is what...
Sincerely, on a deep level. That's the difference.
Sincerely, on a deep level. And this is what... He wanted clarity. What why does the world spin around? Why does the sun rise and set? And he went on a journey, an intellectual journey to find that out. And when he, in the power of his own intellect, was able to come to the conclusion that there was one God in the world and he was master of the world, and God said, here I am, Avraham, whose name at the time was Avram. He said, here I am, and because you've sought me out, I'm going to seek you out now. And that was the beginning of a beautiful relationship.
It's so amazing, like all these parallels and all the things that are happening at once. We have this incredible unrest. They call it in the press unrest, right? It's actually horrible, horrific murder that's being perpetrated against the Jewish people by these Arab monsters, and it's the most serious that's been in some time, and it's being stirred by this lying machine talking about how Israel is trying to encroach on the mosque compound, which of course is Islam's most sacred site outside of Saudi Arabia, but also revered by Jews as a location to destroy biblical Jewish temples. This whole thing is so incredible and there's no words to describe the irony. The Holy Temple is the secret of peace amongst all mankind. That's promised by every prophet. That's the whole idea of what the temple brings to the world, and the klipa, the husk, the evil force that's sitting there is exactly what's preventing a blessing from reaching the world. In the meantime, you talk about Kerry's ignorance and arrogance also, but there's a lot of that going around. And again, unfortunately, this line of blaming the Jews for everything, even for themselves being killed, is so deeply rooted in world consciousness that unfortunately it's also poisoned Jewish consciousness, and so you have plenty of self-immolating, self-hating Jews who also feel that they're responsible and they're to blame. And if we could just stay in the back and not get anyone in anyone's way, some Woody Allen-esque caricature, and therefore you have, first of all, you have the Netanyahu government who is saying, no, we're not planning on doing anything on the Temple Mount. We're never going to allow the Jews to pray there. Don't worry. We respect the status quo. Kerry says, give it to me in writing. I want clarity. So first of all, Yitzchak, what am I holding in my hands?
You're holding a Tanakh.
This is so beautiful. Here's the Bible. And I happen to have it open to the Torah portion that we're reading this week. And that begins in Genesis 12. And in Genesis 12, Hashem said to Avram, go for yourself from your land, from your relatives, from your father's house, to the land that I will show you. Like you said, Yitzchak, leave everything behind, because now I'm starting over again. I brought you Adam. I brought you those generations. I brought from the people who brought you the flood. Now I'm starting again with you, and I will make of you a great nation. I will bless you and make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. Now, I think it says here, attention, John Kerry, I will bless those who bless you, and him who curses you, I will curse. And all the families of the earth shall bless themselves by you. So here you have this Heinz ketchup hairdo, who is this lurch, right? Who is saying that he wants Israel's guarantees in writing, but here I have it in writing. I have the Torah in my hands. That is so ironic. I have it in writing. And you know what else that really just burns my blood about the things that he's been saying the past week, right? He says, we welcome both Israel's and Jordan's commitment to continued maintenance of status quo at the Temple Mount. And don't forget what the quotation that we read from him earlier in the broadcast. I'll just give it to you one more time because it's so inspiring and so beautiful and so patriotic and so much of what America stands for, the freedom to profess and practice one's beliefs is the birthright of every human being. The other thing that Mr. Birthright of every human being, ketchup hairdo, said was, he says, here it is, hold on just a second, I have it here, okay, he says, I gotta find it, it's really important. Oh, he says, okay, so he says, we welcome both Israel's and Jordan's commitment to continual maintenance of the status quo, but then he says, we are not seeking a new change or outsiders to come in. I don't think Israel or Jordan wants that, and we're not proposing it. What we need is clarity.
Who the hell is he?
And who are the outsiders? Are we, the Jewish people, the outsiders? This is the place of the temple, the place where our forefathers prayed. It is totally usurped, destroyed, upended, and historically bastardized by Islam. And the Muslims, these are the same folks who brought us a couple of days ago this week the burning, once again, the ransacking, the torching of the tomb of Joseph in Shechem, in Nablus. Okay? When they started with their Intifada war, way back when in 2000, they burnt down Joseph's tomb to the ground. And now once again, after having beaten a group of Jewish worshippers who were, and I quote, unauthorized to be praying there, the Palestinian Authority policemen, thugs, terrorists, trained and financed by the CIA, beat these Jews who came to pray there, and they set Joseph's tomb on fire. And the pictures from
it's
the
their
devastation.
right. It's a holy place to them.
It's so horrible, right? And they're always talking about, and the PA Accords, by the way, with Israel are about mutual respect of the holy places and all this kind of thing. But as I mentioned in the video, the brief video that we made on the Temple Mount this week on the 850th anniversary of the Aliyah of the Rambam to the Temple Mount, I mentioned in that video the connection. The connection is very, very obvious. Why all of a sudden did they have to burn down Joseph's tomb? It's the same logic as what's going on with the Temple Mount, because Joseph's tomb, as well as the tomb of the patriarchs in Hebron, as well as the Temple Mount, are the three places that are recorded in the Torah as being purchased by the children of Israel in this land. And they are the very crux of the matter. They are the very epitome of the covenant that we have and the sovereignty and the ownership of this land before the eyes of the whole world. And that's why they have to contradict that. But again, I started talking about the whole story about how it's always about blame the Jews. And therefore, when these things are not reported, or when they are reported, but they're reported in a very minor way, or where the implication by the world press is always about how Israel is killing the Palestinians. Israel is killing even though these happen to be Palestinians that are in the middle of murdering Jews by knife, by bullet, by car, by whatever, and we accidentally, and we killed them because they're attacking us, right? The idea is it's all our fault. Everything is our fault. And some of the logic is that this is what we deserve because this is where we are, because it's contested, because we're occupiers and all that business. Even though there is no Palestinian nation and this never was a Palestinian land, it can't possibly be that we are occupying Palestine because there weren't any Palestinians. There was no Palestinian land that we were. As a matter of fact, Judea and Samaria and Gaza were occupied from 1948 to 1967. Judea and Samaria was occupied by Jordan, and Gaza was occupied by Egypt. Those are the occupiers, but nobody was complaining then about Palestinian rights. Nobody was talking then about the poor displaced Palestinians and how they all are refugees. Nobody was talking about it then because it wasn't Israel. Anyway, the idea is, unfortunately, this mentality of blaming the Jews and taking responsibility as if everything is our fault that we exist is so poisonous that there's plenty of Jews who also subscribe to it. Not only Netanyahu, who says, "Oh no, God forbid, we're not going to change the status quo on the Temple Mount," but you have these rabbis who opine in blogs and in articles and in statements that the Jewish people should not be going to the Temple Mount, and it's totally ignorant and obnoxious. And they're talking about how, the position of the Torah is that we shouldn't be going to the Temple Mount, and that we, those Jews who risk it all and go to the Temple Mount in the name of all of Israel in purity, after having expertly mastered the complex Jewish laws about going to the Temple Mount, and yes, knowing exactly where to tread, these rabbis are saying that we are the ones who are causing the Muslims to hate us and want to kill us because we're going to the Temple Mount to pray. And that kind of statement from a rabbi is the height of absolute moral and intellectual bankruptcy and total ignorance. That a rabbi could say that Jews who go to the Temple Mount are endangering the people of Israel. What is this? Are we all going to crawl into a hole and cower and cover up because maybe the Arabs are going to try to kill us because we're Jews? Because actually that's what they do. Because we're living as Jews. If we can't live as Jews, if we can't do what we are entrusted to do, if we cannot continue to bring the light into the world and to stand up for what it means to be a Jew, so then what's it all worth? What a total twisting of everything that it means to be a Jew and everything that the Torah is all about. That's what we're facing today. But again, this is all on the backdrop of two amazing points of that are concentrically dissecting in serendipitous perpendicular manner.
Yeah.
And that is Parshat Lech Lecha, which is all about Avram coming forth, and the month of Cheshvan, MarCheshvan, which is all about the deep-rooted movement towards the dedication of the future temple. It's all happening. Do you see what I'm saying? It's all, the timing is exquisite. And the whole thing with Avram coming out into the world now is all because Hashem is looking for someone to take responsibility for humanity. It didn't work until now. And that's why Avram appears on the world stage at this particular time. Because God is sick and tired of all the shenanigans, of everything that went on from Adam's time, and the flood, and the generation of the tower. And God is saying, will someone please rise up and say, I will teach humanity that there is a God. I will preserve that legacy, that there's a reason for life. And that's who Avram is. I was learning the most unbelievable thing last Shabbat in the Beit Yaakov. Yitzchak, I was learning that the builders of the Tower of Babel were actually, it was like the opposite of the Beit HaMikdash. That was like their idea of the Holy Temple. They were like trying to, again, to steal the Shefa. They were like, that was like the opposite image of the Holy Temple, because the Holy Temple is all about unity. And it's all about bringing people together. But their vision of unity was to rebel against God. And the whole reason that they were doing it just at that time is because simultaneously, as we read here in the Torah, this is when Avram's light began to shine. So it's always that there are these opposite forces that are working. And honestly, there is no connection whatsoever between the horrendous violence that's being perpetrated against Jewish men, women, and children here in the land of Israel and the Temple Mount, except for the fact that indeed there is a tremendous awakening in the heart of the people of Israel as to how important the Temple Mount is to us, and that it is the soul of everything. And the other side feels that very, very strongly, and the other side realizes it is in the death throes of its lie. And that's exactly what's going on here. And
the other side is mortally in fear and in danger and threatened by, what do we say this past year? 10,000 Jews went up to the Temple Mount. That was the count, something like that. I mean, imagine if 50,000, if 100,000, if 500,000, if 1,000,000 Jews went up to the Temple Mount. The other side, the Sitra Achra actually, the other side would just die from fear. It would be over, peacefully.
My clock is not working. How much time do we have left?
We have 8 minutes, Rabbi.
I wanted to mention that I'm going to be in the United States of America during the month of November. And I'm going to be speaking about these things in a very, very
calm?
No, I don't know how calm I'll be, but I'm going to shed a lot of light on exactly what's going on here and exactly where we are in time. And I will be bringing a unique message from the Temple Mount, from the Temple Institute. And the details of this speaking tour will be posted shortly on our Facebook page and website. I will just mention at this time that we'll be speaking in Bentonville, Arkansas, in Denver, Colorado, several events in Minneapolis. I will be speaking in Houston. I will be speaking in, I believe, Odessa, Texas. I think in Abilene. I think we'll be speaking in New Mexico. Also, there will be several events in the Lubbock community. So we're going to be posting the details of the venues, times, contact information, etc. Very, very shortly. And it will really be an opportunity, I hope, to bring some truth to America, because it's just so disturbing how good people, are really totally unaware of what's going on and what it means also for the whole world, as the specter of jihad, basically, jihad by immigration, jihad by legislation, is taking over the entire free world.
just a month ago, we were all talking about the agreement between the United States and the European nations and Iran, which I think President Obama implied that was going to bring world peace. And I think there's a connection here. I don't think there's a disconnect. I think that was simply the preview of what's happening now and what will continue to happen. This is direction. He, as the Arabs like to say, Obama opened up the gates of hell with that deal. And there's going to be a big price to be paid for it. Right now, the Jewish people are paying the price here in the land of Israel, but that price is
First of all, it's becoming more and more clear and scandalously clear that the United States ruined Libya. And the same thing is happening in Syria. And it's all the policy of this open arms of the Arab Spring, which has turned basically into the gates of hell.
Mm-hmm. So these aren't separate, isolated incidents, and even that they keep referring to the terrorists, to the people who knife and shoot and run over Jews here as isolated, as spontaneous, as there's
lone wolf.
What's the word?
Lone wolf.
Lone wolf. There's absolutely no lone wolf here. There is a common denominator, and that is the incitement that is being pumped out every day by the Palestinian Authority, by Hamas, by the Islamic movement inside of Israel. And every day it's out there. If you want to venture onto Arab language media, social media, you can see it there. Everything's translatable these days. You can see it. And when a 13-year-old kid decides to go out with a knife and stab another 13-year-old kid, it's not because he can't find a job. It's not because he's frustrated with the occupation. It's not because it's too long of a wait.
He's not frustrated because there's so many settlements, like Kerry said?
Yeah, it's not because he's too long of a wait to get through. It's because he's been poisoned with this hatred of Jews from the day he was born, because 23 years ago was when they signed Oslo, and since then, the entire school system, educational system, media, and mosques, and every public institution in the Palestinian Authority has been built on incitement and hatred and dehumanization of Jews, that this is all this child knows. And when he goes out with a knife today, it's because he knows his family will be honored, whether he comes back dead or alive, that his family will get a stipend, whether he comes back dead or alive, that he will be a martyr in the eyes and in his Palestinian compatriots, and that the head of the Palestinian Authority, Abbas, will praise him till no end for shedding his blood on behalf of who the hell knows what he shed his blood on, for the glorification of death. So I was reading, there's a new ritual now among the Palestinians of smelling. They want to smell the blood of their martyrs.
Oh, gross.
The sickness just grows and grows.
And by the way, when they bury their martyrs, they bury them along with soil from the Temple Mount. How's that for the ultimate irony?
I'm going to leave. I think I'm going to throw up right now, Rabbi. You better. I'm about to take over, please. 2 minutes, 40 seconds left, Rabbi.
Look, the fact is, everything is perfect timing as we read these Torah portions about the emergence of Avraham and the promises that were made to him and his destiny, really, and the name change that takes place in this Torah portion, the covenant between the portions, and the whole idea of preserving this legacy of the identity of God in the world. It's all really perfect timing, and we need to mention also that visiting the Temple Mount is actually getting smoother since those Valkyries were outlawed. The actual visit to the Temple Mount has been going very well, and again, more and more people have been coming in accordance with Jewish law, in reverence for the place, to be seen there by God, to pray there, to exercise their right to pray. And once again, despite all the violence, despite everything that's been happening, Israel is still the safest place in the world. And there's no other place in the world that we'd like to be, that we want to be, that we know we have to be in. And we still want to encourage everyone more than ever to stand with Israel, to come and visit and see for themselves what really is happening here and what we are dealing with, and to be part of the blessing that Israel
Lech
is.
Lecha, go to yourself. Be true to yourself. Go to the land. once in the land, again, the next parasha, Avraham will get to Lech Lecha, to Mount Moriah. It's the same commandment. And I think the real meaning of Lech Lecha is be true to yourself, be true to who you are, be true to who... Go to yourself, go to your inward journey. Find yourself, find what God created. Find who you really are meant to be. And I think if we today stick with that, then we're going to be fine, because we will walk right through, just like Avraham walked through those, the Brit Ben Betarim.
Before that, he was thrown into Nimrod's fiery furnace. And he walked right through it, because he was true to himself and he was true to the God of Israel. And that is the secret, and that is the difference between those who are in favor of Jews praying in the Temple Mount and those who aren't. It's that simple. You can just put it in those simple words. Thank you for being with us, Temple Talk. We'll be back again next week.